So your time at Furman, or your time in college, is an opportunity to wander the world in search of something. That world can be spatial in terms you could study abroad, spend a semester in Europe, spend a semester in Asia, or it can be more academic, exploring different courses and the information embedded within those. My own exploration started with how can I be a better tree hugger, how can I save trees, but that path has taken me to exposed me to different disciplinary ideas and unexpected interruptions. As a student, as a new student, one of the most important choices you might make is your major. You see that major as setting you up for your career. Along the way, though, you're going to have a number of intersections. You're going to come up against new ideas, you're going to intersect with different passions, and unexpected and exciting engagement opportunities. I want to argue, or hopefully convince you all today, that those random intersections, unexpected classes that you take during your time at college might be the most important opportunities for you. And in truth, set you up for broader life successes. Your major can be seen as a pathway or a guidepost. Say, here's a set of courses, here's a track, this is what I'm going to do. Along the way, there are a series of courses that you might see as impediments, so maybe a speed bump that you need to accelerate through, just get it done and out of the way, or perhaps a stopping point that you put off until the very end. These general education requirements are the hallmark of liberal education, and I think actually provide some of the most valuable tools and perspectives for a student and for anyone in general. Furman, as a liberal arts school, has its broad suite of GERs. I've heard students rumble about it, even the faculty say, wow, we have a lot of GERs. But I think that's actually fantastic. We require you to take classes in history, in English, in science, in art, and this exposure is really valuable. When students ask, what is your favorite class to teach? And I see a few of my students from different classes here, so if you're not in this class, this is not anything about you in particular, but I love teaching my non-majors biology course. When you have multiple kids, you can't really say which is your favorite, but if there were only those students in the room, I'd say biology and the environment is my favorite class to teach at Furman. So, who am I? I'm a biology professor here at Furman. I really like this meme because it allows me to kind of talk about what I think I do and reflect on maybe what other people think that I do. What I think is even more important or more valuable in it is the fact that I like to think I do all of this. In the sense that information, decisions, teaching, our interactions with the world are much more compelling, are much more interesting when we take different ideas and stack them together. Layering knowledge, layering experiences, layering ways forward ultimately allows us to better understand the real world and be productive citizens. So, let's start with who everybody, my family, my friends, my students who think that I really am. That one that was in the top left-hand corner there. I'm a birder, I will freely admit. Some might even call me a bird nerd. I have a life list. I've identified, traveled the world, seen over 500 different species. I engage in competitions who can see the most number of birds in a day, in a year. My father and I have a running competition there. I get excited, passionate when other faculty members leave dead birds on my desk. It happened this week. It was fantastic. It was a yellow-bellied sapsucker. But interacting with that is really, really cool. And in the same way, I'll travel anywhere to see a vermilion flycatcher. When Hurricane Katrina occurred in 2003, 2004, I was the only person driving south. Everyone was trying to escape. I was trying to find that bird. But it's more than just finding a bird. Getting outside allows me to be in nature, to appreciate that, explore a new area, and as a researcher, to that inspiration for the next project. Teaching biology in the environment gives me the opportunity to share that passion with other students. One thing I have the students do throughout the semester is we learn to identify a diversity of different species. We do trees, plants, mammals, reptiles, amphibians. By the end of the semester, they can identify a suite of birds by sight, some by sound, but ultimately my goal is when the students walk out of the class, they can identify more birds than they can fashion brands, which is really sad, because if you look through and you ask the average person, if we did in this room, how many brands of clothing, how many companies can you name, it's probably more there than birds. And so that sometimes I feel is my crowning achievement in that class. But it's a pathway to understanding the diversity of life. When you see that there's 10,000 species of bird in the world, it really opens the door that there's a lot out there to explore. It's also a key intersection. We start thinking big ideas and complex ideas as how do we communicate. As scientists, we are not always the most effective at communicating complex ideas. I love this figure, but if you're a non-scientist, it might not make any sense whatsoever, a bunch of random lines. So I've really enjoyed, in my non-majors biology class, learning from my students how to more effectively communicate complex ideas. The idea of data visualization, I think, is a really important field that intersects with biology. And the idea of communicating and learning how to communicate across disciplines is key. One, if you're a biologist, you may go on to a career in biology, but you're going to have to communicate to non-biologists. So how do you learn those language, that terminology? And I think just as interestingly, even though you're a biologist in training, the career you might end up in probably won't be biology. This is a nice figure that does not show up quite as nicely on our screen here, but each of these different lines comes from someone who graduated biology and the career that they're in now. And so you can see it's everything from law to government, business, economics. And when I think back to some of the recent graduates from Furman and some of my peers, most of us aren't in a biology job. We're doing something different. And so we have to learn to communicate to multiple different audiences. And it's not just biologists. If we took all the different majors, which are on the left-hand side of the figure, so blue, brown, and green, and then on the right side where those gray boxes are, those are different careers. It's the intersection, it's the unexpected opportunities, it's the new ideas that you're ultimately going to need to succeed in your career. And so what I want to share or communicate is this idea that, look to those GERs, look forward to your GERs as an opportunity to explore something new. And I want to share how a couple of GERs and classes outside of biology really shaped who I am today. One of those, is you get the opportunity to maybe read different books. On the Road is a really important book for me. Taught that there's idea of exploration, new opportunities, go on a grand adventure, and perhaps most importantly, that all the prettiest girls are from Des Moines. Oh. And if you think about forcing you to look at the world in a slightly different way, starting from a bird's eye view, we've all heard that before, is actually, it really is a different way of looking. And your GERs can prepare you, if you're a biologist or a scientist, to think about the complex issues before us today. How, as a bird biologist, do I feel about immigration? If I had just taken science courses, I'd have a much narrower view of the world. And so through my GERs, those unexpected experiences, I moved from being just a bird biologist to trying to understand farming and food systems. When I had the opportunity to give this talk, this is my favorite image. I thought, can I just talk about this for 8 minutes? Probably could, might not be as interesting, but this represents 6 different food systems globally. But what's powerful here is we're looking from that bird's eye view, and we think about the different layers that shaped what we see. It's ecology, which is what I do. It's history, it's culture, it's economics. And to understand these systems, we have to be able to integrate all those complex ideas. And you might ask, why does a biologist who is interested in saving trees and wandering to find birds care about food? Again, another poet, a writer, Wendell Berry from Kentucky, perhaps said it best. As part of a longer quote, he essentially said, conservationists eat. And so if I want to save birds, if I want to save trees, I have to think about the food systems. Food and culture are inextricably linked. Nature and culture, I think we would all agree, are key, and they go together. However, as much as I hate to admit it sometimes, economics drives decision making. How much something costs is going to shape what we do on a daily basis. Perhaps, and when I, reflecting back on, again, what exposed me to different ideas, The way I got started in birding was birding with my father. You might think, oh, how exciting is that? But when your father offers you and is willing to pay, if we think of economic terms, $5 per bird to get you outside, that's a pretty good deal. And so we'd run around the forest, and every new bird I found for him, he'd pull out a $5 bill and say, here you go. So we think about economics as a driving factor in decision making. And in truth, as an undergraduate student and as a graduate student, I took just about as many economics courses as I did biology. I get more and more excited about how this particular field can inform and influence what I do. And so my students and I continue to do research across fields. One of our projects that we particularly enjoy recently was we asked how much would Greenville County residents be willing to pay to save birds. More specifically, we asked how much would you be willing to pay to see a 5% increase in forest cover, and how much would you be willing to pay in your taxes? So we're a relatively conservative part of the country, but one of the most surprising things was people were willing to pay almost $20 per person per year for 10 years to see an increase in forest cover. That gives me as a biologist a really powerful piece of information to go back and communicate more broadly. We continue to work stacking different ideas, thinking about different layers. How do we add value? So we talk about carbon, we talk about water, we talk about quality of life. And ultimately, we're thinking about the real world as stacked knowledge. And I am going to cheat here a little bit because it sounded so much better when I wrote it, right? So in the real world, in your career, problems will be complex, or even better, wicked problems. Your GERs give you the ability to stack information, whether it be ecology, economics, or whatever your particular passion is. And more importantly, your GERs give you kind of the freedom while you're in college to explore, to try something new, to maybe go in a different direction. And so I want to end with coming back to our quote here and suggest that I've been able to wander the world in search of life. Whether it's bird by bird or GER by GER, I've come to know the place I live and the people that I interact with.